Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon, and I'm one of the co-owners and managing directors with Impetus Digital. Impetus Digital has built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration tools. We help life science companies virtualize their meetings, everything from advisory boards and working groups, medical education, to MSL and sales rep training. And we're actually going to be launching a new product called Insight Event, where people are going to be able to run corporate meetings as well as large conferences. But more importantly than that, at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from that conversation, we can move worlds together. We can have these big, hairy, audacious conversations so that we can go beyond the pill. We can talk about things that are truly going to help to positively disrupt healthcare. And so this is one of the reasons for this podcast and this YouTube channel, so that we can speak to the provocateurs, the people who are on the leading edge, the leaders in pharma, who are going to help to move the needle on what we're doing today for patients and in the healthcare field. So I'm super excited to have Frank Armenante with us today. Frank is actually an experienced commercial director with a demonstrated history of working in the pharmaceutical industry. He has is a strong operations professional. He's skilled in sales, management, healthcare, diabetes, and sales execution. He has over 12 years of experience, and he's been working in a variety of roles at Novo Nordisk. He's currently the Director of Commercial Execution, so we're going to want to dig in a little bit on what that means. And before joining Novo, he worked at Bristol Myers Squibb as the Manager of Incentive Compensation. So welcome, Frank. Wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Natalie. Great to be here. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, it's been a long, winding road to today, 2020. Many years spent at Bristol Myers Squibb in lots of different roles, and same thing with Novo Nordisk. And before that, I was in the restaurant industry for about 10 years. So it's been a long, strange trip to get where today
I'm dying to dig in because you do have a very interesting and impressive resume. So why don't you take us through that journey? I mean, sure. For some people these days, it seems like a pretty regular trajectory. People are going to MBAs or biotech schools and entering in pharma, but many of us have come into it in different ways. So tell us what you've learned from the restaurant business and how you ended up coming into a big leadership role that you have today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I actually started working in the restaurant business when I was 16. My family owns a restaurant in Princeton. It's been there for, over almost 50 years now, and learned a lot about people in that. Went to school at Rutgers with a double major in English and history, which is nothing what I really use today from that standpoint, although I guess, a lot of when it comes to English and writing and communicating comes from there. After being in the restaurant industry and doing all kinds of different things from bartending, et cetera, I had a chance to work at Bristol Myers Squibb with a dear friend of mine who's still there, brought me in, and my first job ever in pharmaceuticals was I was an administrative assistant. And started just like when I was in the restaurant industry, started at the more novice part of the industry, learned a ton. Eventually went to grad school at Stevens Institute of Technology to get an information systems background, and parlayed that into what was kind of the beginning of my incentive comp career, where I was doing a lot of just design of software, and but quickly realized that as much as it's exciting, I love people. So started to do plan design and spent many years there working on all kinds of incentive comp. And at one point was supporting about 5 of the vice presidents of sales that the company had at the time. And one of my dear friends, a gentleman, Dave Whitehead, God bless him, he was a great guy, still is. He told me, Frankie, you got to get into sales if you really want to know how to incentivize salespeople. So I went into sales as a representative for nearly 2 years, and then eventually made my way over to Novo Nordisk, where I've done roles in incentive comp. I've done roles on the market access side of the business, institutions. So how that works from a health system standpoint and a hospital standpoint. Had another dear friend of mine at Novo say, Frank, you got to get into the field and be a district manager. And he was a good mentor of mine and a prized friend. And he went into the field as a district manager, did that in a couple different places for nearly 3 years. And then one of our heads of marketing, Ed Senka, another dear friend, created this commercial execution team. And I jumped into that in 2016. And I've gone from managing or directing different parts of the United States, where I am right now in the southern portion of the United States, which covers mainly the Southeast states. As the director of commercial execution, I have a wonderful team, I have a wonderful boss, and work for a fantastic company that really is trying to defeat diabetes. And if we can do that, man, oh man, it would be a great world. So that's kind of my journey along the way. I'm married to a wonderful wife of nearly 20 years. I have 3 little boys who are 12, 10, and 7. Coach wrestling with them, coach soccer at times with them, and love to spend time with them and my friends and my family. So that's kind of a little bit about
Sounds
me.
like a superhero story, Frank. And I will have to tell you what I think is super fascinating about your story is I think where you started from. Here we are finding ourselves, and we'd be remiss not to get into some dialogue around the world we're in today, specifically as it was launched by the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we're seeing, a huge amount of social unrest, issues around diversity, inclusion. We're seeing issues around people losing jobs, employment issues, economic upheaval. And we see this a lot in the service industry, the restaurant, entertainment industry. Having come from that, is there an opportunity for people to reskill, retool, and reframe? And is pharma an opportunity for people to get in based on your personal experience?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. People in general are very resilient, and I think that America is very resilient. And if you look at industries like the pharmaceutical industry, one of the beautiful things that it does is it's about discovering drugs that can help people live better lives, whatever their situation might be. So we're always dealing with trying to handle the healthcare of America and the world. And so when you see the world change with COVID-19, which forces us to step away from our loved ones, step away from the physical interactions, right? Think about it on our side, commercial sales, that's like a face-to-face, shaking hands on deals and things like that. And that changes when you come into COVID-19 and what it's done to us. And I think that while we will eventually beat this and we will eventually get to a place where we can have a lot more personal interactions, now's the time to take a look at what's springing up, right? Take a look at companies like Zoom, take a look at what Amazon's been able to do, Walmart's been able to do in this digital world. And I think what you're seeing is that whatever job you're in, whether it's pharmaceuticals or outside of the industry, you've got to take a look at what are the youth of today using? What are the corporations grabbing onto, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Google Meets, et cetera, and how are they using that to interact with customers? How are they using that to interact with each other? And what are the skills you need to know to be able to take advantage of it? I just picked up Adobe Premiere 3 weeks ago, which allows you to put video together because we're doing a lot of video. And I'm like, darn it, I'm going to learn how to use this. So I did. I've learned how to patch videos together and do intros and things like that. And that's just me saying that's something that we need to be able to do and understand. And it's going to be bigger as time goes on. And regardless of whether we go back to, a world where things are a lot more closer and physical interactions, you're still going to have these talents that you're going to need to build to be able to interact digitally, because digital is not going to go away. As a matter of fact, we're learning it works really well. And it can really enhance things and make things more interactive. And it can definitely bridge distance better, right? So maybe you had a hard time reaching certain customers in the past. Now you can use a digital medium that they're becoming more familiar with, you're getting better at, and you can cross a boundary that would have normally been, maybe you saw somebody once every 6 months. Now you can see them, once every week or twice a month, to be able to have interactions and make good, partnerships with. So I think that now's the best time, if whatever industry you're in, to figure out how to use digital to help bridge the gap between you and your coworkers, bridge the gap with your peers, bridge the gap with your customers, bridge the gap with patients, however it might be. And I think that's where pharma is very quickly learning the industry on how to make that digital jump that we kind of played with before, right? It was there, you could use some apps and things like that, but now it's really starting to come into its own based off of a bad situation. So good things are coming out of it.
So let's talk a little bit about your role as the Director of Commercial Execution. So there was obviously a series of strategies and tactics and projects and programs that you were running prior to COVID-19. Did those strategies and tactics and programs and projects dramatically change after the pandemic hit? What is kind of your core focus now, and does the world look different in your role?
I think there are two sides to that coin that you have to answer. So did things change? Yeah, they sure did. I think where if you're using it from a US based, March, April was that time where people were kind of dumbstruck on how they're going to do things and when's this going to change and what's going to get better and when are we going to get back to normal. And I think that's where all of us in this industry and myself, my team, my peers, we had to say, well, how are we going to make this work, right? We've got a product that customers need. Customers want it, but we can't walk in the door and talk to them like we used to. So I think we quickly figured out how we can use different systems and build different systems to bridge that gap, allow them, like, some of the things that a sales representative does in pharmaceuticals is they go and they deliver great information to physicians to help them make good decisions. They deliver samples to allow customers to experience our products, right? And to be able to know how that drug is going to help them, or maybe it doesn't. Well, now what you've got to do is figure out how you're going to do that when you can't see people face to face. So I think we created a lot of systems that allowed individuals to remotely access and order samples. And with the beauty of the way that delivery is these days, whether it's UPS or FedEx or whatever you're using, that becomes something that we can do, and we can do it rather quickly. Yes, you run into some challenges. Yes, you run into some delays in some ways. We also came up with ways to digitally interface with people, which worked, which actually in some cases had the added benefit where some customers who wouldn't allow you to have a face-to-face interaction because of their rules, they all of a sudden said, well, we can do remote. Yeah, I could do something at 5 o'clock to 5:15, or hey, give me a call at 7:30 in the morning and let's chat. And then all of a sudden now you've bridged some gaps with customers where you couldn't even access them and get to them. Now you can. It's a win-win, win for the customer, win for us. And I think our salespeople also became very quickly digitally savvy. How can they use a digital medium to make the connection? How can they use smiles and body language and fun things to keep that connection live and interactive? And then how do they use our digital tools that they normally would be able to show them face to face? How do you do that in a digital medium? And so, for us, it changed dramatically because we had to teach people very quickly, get them up to speed, help iron the hiccups. And what my team does and what I do is we help govern all of that. And maybe govern is maybe too strong of a word. We help finesse all of that and help the sales force to overcome any boundaries that might get in their way, whether it's a digital one, whether it's a communication one, whether it's how to use technology to help them, whether it's using it on their phone or their iPad or their computer. We also provide, I think, a lot of insight, right? We take a look at what's going on out there. Like, it's almost like air traffic control. All these streams are coming into my team, and pieces of information. And how do you put it together in a way that allows them to artfully get in front of the sales force and give them the direction that they need to be able to take? Under normal circumstances, that's challenging. Under COVID, it becomes even more challenging because you've got to figure out how you can get the same information in front of people in a way that is not something that they're used to doing. And so what commercial execution does is it takes all of the things that sales is trying to do on a day-by-day basis, and it provides the mediums and the means to be able to do that. It bridges a gap between marketing, right? This is what we should be doing, to sales. How do we actually execute it? We help almost talk the two languages, right? I can speak marketing, I can speak sales, and we can create that smooth transition where in many cases, no matter what industry you're in, sales and marketing sometimes don't have a perfect alignment. So we provide that service as well from a commercial execution standpoint.
So
We
this,
also,
so that sounds fantastic. So I just kind of wanted to linger a few minutes on
yeah,
potentially different or varied views on the role of the pharmaceutical sales rep in the new normal. Traditionally, and for years and years and years, sales reps have been kind of cloistered or divided by geographical barriers. We call those territories. Now, with the advantage of the virtual world and the ability for one to speak to many, is the territory as a concept going to change? Is there a need for more regionalization or more globalization as it relates to the super rep speaking to many people, since there isn't necessarily the need for people in specific geographical spheres?
a great question. And I think that there are two aspects to it. So I'm convinced that for as long as we are here, and if you actually look in the past, for as long as we've been here, face-to-face, one-on-one interactions can be some of the most enriching conversations and ways of either getting information from one person to another or convincing someone to buy something from you, right? Sharing educational information, et cetera. That will always be there. And I think that the reason why you have territories is because it gives you a set of individuals who you are going to try to influence over a series of time. The need to have that face-to-face one-on-one to get rich, strong dialogue will always be there. That being said, we also do things, in our company, we call it interface, but most pharmaceutical companies have what's like a peer-to-peer type of situation where a prominent physician, well-versed in a disease state, will speak to other physicians, right, in some sort of environment. Typically, it's done in a restaurant. They've got a big screen, right? You've got a nice casual environment. Now, we're seeing the need in many cases of doing it digitally, right? So I get a doctor in front of many other doctors. And that's where sales representatives can facilitate that, and they can set that up. They can set the stage for that. And that gives what you're talking about, the one-to-many type of interaction. We've seen some really good success with that. I think that it also allows you to get different physicians to hear the message coming from an organization that normally would not be the type of person that says, all right, I'll take a night off and I'll go out and leave my house and my family. I'll go to dinner for 2 or 3 hours and then I'll come back. Now it could be they do it right from the comfort of their home. So I think there's that, right? The one to many on a physician to physician and how the sales rep can facilitate that conversation. But I don't think that you're going to change the one-to-one conversations. If anything, what you see is a territory that's large. It allows you to hit those fringe physicians or those fringe customers in a much more efficient manner, rather than having someone drive, say, 3 hours. You can jump on a Zoom, Teams, whatever, and you can have a conversation for 15, 20 minutes and get the same type of interaction. As a matter of fact, you might get more time. We're seeing actually when people do these interactions, they get more time. The model that you are thinking, right? One to many, I can like reach across the United States. I don't think we're ready for something like that yet. I don't think we're made as an organization or an industry to do that type of approach yet. Is that something that could potentially happen? Yeah, I think it would be a supplement. I don't think it'll replace the face-to-face, you're my people, you trust me, right? Trust comes from that type of relationship. And we're going to have a good long relationship over the years, that I'm going to be someone that's going to always represent what my company, the information you need to better help your patients for whatever disease state it might be. I'm trying to be generic because I truly believe it's not just Novo Nordisk, but I think it's any company that's selling a pharmaceutical product to a patient. So that's my opinion.
So that's actually brilliant. And I think that's actually fair. And I think there's a lot of people who agree with you as well, is that there are certain staples in society, and lots of it is coming up as well in the virtual world. There's a hybridization where there is going to be this nice mix. We'll find that mix between the virtual and then the in-person. So let's actually just kind of backtrack a little bit about what did happen in those early months of the pandemic. A lot of people froze. A lot of people stopped working in the same functionality that we're used to. And that same kind of functionality in regards to, one, how people were managing clinical studies. So a lot of those got frozen. Two, being able to switch patients to new types of medications, or updosing or reducing dosing, or kind of managing through things. So either that or completely trying new products. So so projecting to where we are today, has the industry been impacted by people trying to take the safe side and not, quote unquote, buggering up whatever it is that they already put patients on? And is anybody switching, changing, modifying, trying new products, or are they still kind of frozen in fear?
I think it started off that way. I think there was a pause in the way you would maybe tinker with the patient's medications. You know, speaking from a diabetes standpoint, patients tend to be on not just diabetes products. They tend to have other comorbidities, so they could be on multiple products. I think it would be safe to say a physician who's got a patient on maybe 4 or 5 products might be less willing to tinker and make changes when they're not face to face with the patient. Maybe they're not even in communication with the patient because the patient doesn't have the ability to use technology at their disposal to have an interaction with them. I think if you have a physician who's digitally savvy, with a customer who's digitally savvy and really understands the disease state that they're in, yes, you could see some tinkering. You could see, what they would do in that setting. But I think for the first couple months when we were dealing with COVID-19, I think customers were very reluctant to make changes and make shifts unless they were forced to, right? Maybe it was a formulary switch or something like that, or that's kind of outside of the physician's hands at that point. But I think now, as things have gotten to almost be like this hybrid, right? So yeah, patients are coming into the office a bit more. Usually they're what we call healthy patients. They're not exhibiting any COVID-19 symptoms, right? They're a patient that is going in for a checkup or going in for a what we would call like a well visit. I mean, they're maintaining something. That's where doctors, that's where they thrive. They're gonna be able to make their changes. They're gonna be able to switch to a different product if they need to. So I think that if you were to look at parts of the United States that are still closed off, that are still very, conservative in the way that we're doing things, I think you're seeing probably trends that are typical of people being cautious. Where things are a little bit more, parts of the U.S. where things are a little bit more open, where people are, yes, following good PPE protocols and being careful, but they're not afraid to walk into a doctor's office, or a doctor is saying, you know what, I'm going to go into the office for 3 days this week. I think that's where you're seeing them go back to their normal habits of being able to make changes in medication should a patient not be getting the efficacy they need, et cetera. And I think what will happen is, once you continue to have this comfort zone of digital, patients are going to be able to describe what's going on better. And I think the physician's going to be more likely to make a change. But it also brings up a point that is something that we're learning. There's a lot of patients that don't have the capabilities to get a computer or to have a smartphone, right? There's a large population of our country that their financial situations are different, that prevent them from having a digital interaction. Those are the patients I worry about, because those are the patients that may go off of their medications. They don't have a support structure in place. They don't have someone that they can, maybe do what we're doing here right now and say, Doc, here's what I'm experiencing. And I think that's where we as an industry need to continue to push the envelope and continue to figure out how can we make ways for a patient that doesn't have the same means as others, where there's an economical divide, where there's a social divide, that they can overcome those barriers to have the same healthy, great rate relationships and digital connections that many of us do and have as a luxury, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
where where we need to be looking at how do we do that? Is there a center that people can go to and talk and be able to have the technology there? Is there a way to get the technology? Maybe that's part of what the medicine is, getting it into the patient's home so that they can make that connection with their doctor. If you can do that, you can maybe keep them more compliant, which means that if they're more compliant, they can stay healthier. So those are some of the things I think that are on our horizon that we're going to need to deal with as COVID or any other disease prevents us from having those normal face-to-face interactions. And I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, so some really great nuggets there, and definitely some food for thought around the digital divide, which I think is becoming a greater and greater part of the national discourse and everything around us. So I think there's a lot to be done and said there. So thinking about the typical workday, and now we realize that many physicians are still not seeing patients. Some of them are, obviously having to go into surgeries. But we're also hearing that, with the random lockdowns that are going on and popping up every state, somebody's doing something different. And we're seeing this globally, right? So this is not a Novo Nordisk, this is not a US, this is a global issue. And these lockdowns are resulting in, we're hearing about things like healthcare worker strikes, and we're hearing about canceled surgeries, and and all of this may have a potential impact on the diagnosis of new patients, the treatments of patients, and then, the whole management. So is pharma preparing for a potential, dip or backlog? What is pharma thinking and preparing, or are we just sort of considering this is just like the stock market, this is going to be a blip and then everything is going to go back to normal?
I think you'd be foolish to think something's like this as a blip, but it's going to go back to normal. I think that if you really filter out a lot of the rhetoric that you hear about whether it's COVID-19, et cetera, and just focus on the medicine, focus on the science, focus on the real situation. We have a bad pandemic virus. It may never go away. We're just gonna have to figure out how to deal with it, right? Just like we figured out how to deal with the flu, just like we figured out to deal with some of the other horrible maladies that have hit the world in the past. I think that pharma is not foolish enough to think that it just goes away and we keep doing business as normal. I think that's where you're seeing more of an investment in using digital technologies to connect us to the customer, and then also ultimately connect the customer to the patient, right? It's always about, as long as you keep the patient in mind, you're going to be good. Any company on the planet, if you're selling a pharmaceutical product and you keep the patient in mind, you should be all right. That's my humble opinion. So I think you're going to see things where maybe you're looking at, if it's a device that a person's using to administer their medication, maybe that becomes digital and linked in, where a physician could be at home monitoring their patients remotely. Boom, a notification shows up. Hey, somebody's having trouble with their A1Cs or things like that. That is the kind of place where now a physician can be better connected to the patients. The patients can also be better connected if they can use some digital technologies. That's going to take teaching. That's going to take patience, not patience with a T, but with a C, right? That's going to take simplicity, right? If you look at certain companies like Apple, they make everything simple for people. And that's the secret sauce that they have if you really boil them down as a technology company. And I think that that's what the pharma industry needs to do. They need to be thinking beyond the molecule that they're putting giving to the patient, and how are you delivering the molecule? Is it a pill? Is it a device? Is it a combination of the two? Or maybe they're taking multiple things. You've got to make it where the patient can be taking your medication, can be educated enough to understand what's going on, and if something's not working right, be able to talk to their physician, or technology that monitors, right? I think you're starting to see that, right? A lot of diabetics will have their insulin patches and things like that are linked in using cool new technologies. Those are some of the things in the future that we need to get better and better at, of thinking beyond just delivering a molecule. You've got to deliver almost a service and a solution to the customer and to the patient, so that they can be comfortable in what it is that they're taking and how they're responding, and the physician being aware of what's going on with their patients almost 24/7. Now, is that today? No. But is it 5, 10 years down the line? I think it is. I think we'll get there. And I think we're going to do a really good job of bridging some of the divides that are out there right now.
Yeah, so that's absolutely brilliant. I couldn't agree with you more on it. It's a very exciting place. And I do believe as well that, we're right for that beyond the pill conversation. I think you brought this up, and probably diabetes is probably way ahead of the curve in terms of digital therapeutics that have been approved by the FDA and many others that are coming to the table. So tell us a little bit, Frank, about your curiosity and your companies, and just basically pharmaceuticals companies' opportunity right now to be doing some of these partnerships with these entrepreneurs and these startups and these digital healthcare companies that are popping up everywhere, that are not chemically based, and the potential changes that you're seeing happening with the FDA, new functions within the FDA to deal with these digital therapeutics and these software as a medical device. What is your vision and view and hope for all of this to come to fruition in the future?
Well, I think that you mentioned a few things there, and I'll try to tap on each one. So the FDA is going to need to take themselves into the 22nd century, right? They're going to need to know, they're used to dealing with, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, the molecule, how you dispense the molecule, how you promote the molecule, what you say about it, the fair balance, et cetera. When you start to introduce technology in either how you deliver it or how you augment it or how you make it, complementary, that's going to be a skill set that the FDA is going to need to understand on their end. And they're going to need, and I don't profess to understand that process all that well. I've never touched that side of the business. I'm not in regulatory, et cetera. But I would imagine that they're going to need to up their knowledge and their science and behind it, and being able to understand how something that is not real, a digital thing, and something that's real, a molecule, how they work together, and they're able to help a disease state. So I think that's one part that's going to take some work on the government side to be able to up their ante on how they handle these new hybrid things that are going to be coming at them. I think from a pharmaceutical standpoint, we have to start thinking about beyond just our molecule. What are the services that can go along with it? Is it an app? Is it a device? Is it a combination of the two? Is it an app and a device? Things that talk, things that communicate, things that can show what's going on in the person's body as a result of that molecule, getting it into the hands of a physician who can react to that and can make some sort of a change and an adjustment. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could, and this is me again, this is my big brain or yellow brain thinking differently, but if you had a device that administered a medicine that if it wasn't quite working the way it needs to be, the physician could see it and on the fly make a tiny change, and then over the internet, almost like magic, it changes what's going on in the patient's body and they get a positive response. Like, that's amazing. That's like, I don't know, that's like Star Trek stuff, right? Where they just run something over you and like McCoy would say, you're magically repaired, right? But I think that that's also where we have to envision things, because if you went back 30 years ago, you didn't see any of the things we have today. You didn't see any of the digital devices. There was no internet. There was no, large swaths of data that allowed you to make good decisions and good studies, et cetera. So now what's next, right? Now here we are, we've got these amazing technologies. We've got this amazing amounts of data that can help us make logical, data-driven decisions. And we also have people that with a lot of experience, right? So you can't take the human element out of it, and the entrepreneurial spirit. But when you can marry those three things together, I think that's where you're going to see 10, 20, 30 years from now that medicine is going to have to be a little bit different to allow the patient to feel better, allow the patient to live a healthier life, allow the patient to feel in control of what's going on. Because I think right now, if you talk to, again, speaking from the diabetes space, I think a lot of patients feel out of control, like there's nothing they can do about it. Same thing we were in the obesity space for Novo Nordisk. Out of control, people that they want to control it, they don't know where to get started. Technology can help them do that. Medicines can help them do that. And a good doctor that understands that can really help them as well. So I think that's where the next 30 years are, and where we need to change, the FDA needs to change, and hopefully we'll see a kumbaya and see some real benefits to patients.
Now, with the implementation and the utilization of these, basically, if you will, habit trackers, or these new ways of changing the mechanisms of how one lives their life, maybe the kinds of foods that people are eating, et cetera, they're all the positive repercussions of these digital therapeutics or these digital devices. How much would you say, companies like the Novo Nordisks are basing future therapies more on the preventative side of things in terms of changing completely the way people are actually eating, thinking, living their lives, so that it preempts the potential need or the after effect of getting diabetes? And I think the curious question in all of that is that, something that, Novo Nordisk is looking at changing potentially their business models and getting more into these preventative habit tracking devices and tools, because at the end of the day, ultimately the long-term experiment of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that people were stuck at home and cloistered and lockdowns and social isolation, did that actually foster a lot of bad habits that perhaps we're going to see this bolus and an increase perhaps in diabetes and, increase in insulin levels and other sorts of things? So, kind of curious about your thoughts about the long-term wind effects or downscale effects of what COVID-19 might have on people's health. And secondly, is the opportunity to get more upfront in the preventative maintenance or management around habit formations.
Good question. I'll start with the back end of it. So I think by being the isolation that COVID-19 creates, there's one of two paths that you can go, right? I've got more time now because I'm home, or I'm not going out to the places I have, and I can create good habits. I can go out and run. I can go out and exercise on my own. Maybe I'm much more cognizant of the foods that I'm eating, and I watch and I pay attention. And then there's the opposite, right? I can't get to the gym. I don't feel comfortable working out of my home. I like that structure. Maybe I'm not making as much money. So the foods that I choose are a lot more fast, a lot more carb based, et cetera. And I think you get a person that goes off the rails from that standpoint. It's probably both sides. I think that a couple of the things that we do as a company is, 6 years ago, we began our obesity sales force, right? So we had a product, we put it out there, and I think we've also put out a ton of education around obesity. We do all kinds of work around expanding the United States and the world's understanding of what obesity is and how it leads to all kinds of other complications, one of them being diabetes. So I think that we are definitely ahead of the curve in understanding that there are things that happen before or during when a person has diabetes, and how to attack it. A lot of education. We have diabetes educators. We also have obesity educators within our organization that help at both the highest levels within health systems, but also in the past have helped directly with patients. We have a wonderful digital platform that helps patients be able to, whether it's tracking how they do things with their eating habits, exercising. There's digital assistants that they can get in touch with, live people that they can get in touch with. So I think we've done a lot of good work in creating avenues for patients to be able to understand how to live a healthier lifestyle. But it's kind of like you can create the water. Now, whether the horse comes to drink is a whole different story. And that's where we also try to do a lot of reaching out to the populace at whole and explaining some of the things. We've got all kinds of non-branded type of education for individuals that, with not a lot of looking, they can find. We're also, always, I think any company that is going to just stay in one thing and that's all they're ever going to do, well, change happens, right? Look at what this year brought to us it's the crux of what we're talking about here. So we're constantly looking at different things that can help with patients in their lives. And I think we will always be enmeshed in diabetes, but we're looking at all kinds of different ways, whether it's the cardiovascular side of things, whether it's obesity, whether it's kidney function, et cetera. We're looking at all the things that link into it, right? It all comes down to type 2 diabetes is something that comes from habits and all kinds of other decisions you make. Type 1, very different. But type 2, there's a lot of things you can do that if you can head it off at the pass here, head it off at the pass here, you may be able to prevent a patient from ever reaching that point where they develop type 2 diabetes. And we're looking at all of those streams. And all you need to do is go look at our website and you can see all the great work that we're doing on those things leading into it. Slowly, with good thought and with keeping the patient in mind is where we focus. And I think a lot of other companies are looking at it as well, on all of the comorbidities and things that link into whether it's diabetes, the mental health aspect of it as well, what that creates. There's a non-physical side to diabetes, obesity, and other cardiovascular diseases that you've got to be aware of, and you've got to be able to provide the insight for that, because the mind is just as powerful as the body. And if you have one out of sync with the other, becomes hard to manage any type of disease states that you have. So I hope that.
We've been talking a lot about patient centricity for many, many years. And I'm just curious about what patient centricity means to you, and the involvement of patients, especially since there's so many different avatars as it relates to the diabetes marketplace. And we talked a little bit about the digital divide, but there is probably definitely a social economic status concept here, and how companies like Novo Nordisk can help to sort of conquer again, there's this fine line between boiling the ocean and being able to micro niche and to do some real systemic innovations thinking. What are some of the strategies or suggestions that you have in the greater community, in the greater healthcare ecosystem, to help solve some of these really impenetrable questions?
Yeah, and it's a question that we could probably talk about for about 2 or 3 hours, and going into the nuances. I think I would break it down to 3 different things. I think affordability is one of the first ones. And affordability is not, it shouldn't be so nuanced to be, can I put the money down and pay for something I need to make me healthier? It's also, do you understand what you're doing? Is it sustainable, right? Maybe you can pay for it this month, maybe you can't pay for it the next month. And I think Novo Nordisk has done a phenomenal job of being able to create an affordable environment for any of our products to patients, whether it's health plan links, that they can be able to use if they have commercial affordability, whether it's Part D, where it's government-based. And also, if you're in a situation where you just don't have a lot of money, we have a really well put together patient assistance plan. And I think most companies are looking at that and saying, we've got to be able to make it so that any patient, no matter what their socioeconomic status, no matter where they are in their lives, they should be able to get the company's products in a reasonable manner, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of work on the patient side to fill out paperwork or whatever it might be. But I think that what we've seen now, especially in a digital world, it's becoming easier and easier for the patient to do that. So that's kind of pillar 1. I think the second one is education, right? You can make a product affordable, but if a patient doesn't know what it's doing for them and doesn't know what the impact is and doesn't know the lifestyle changes that they need to make to help the medicine help them, well, they're doomed. They're not going to get beyond maybe 1 or 2 months of taking it, and then they're going to give up and they're going to get frustrated. So I think that as long as we continue to make education available, easy to get, easy to digest, and simple to understand, we will tackle that second pillar of allowing a patient to really know what their medication is doing for them. Why is it that they should go out and walk every day for 20 minutes? Why is it that they should examine the foods that they're eating and the choices they're making there to help the medicine really get them to be where they want to be? And because it's not just the medicine that can help a patient, regardless of the disease state you're dealing with, it's lifestyle changes, medicine, and psychological. Those 3 things are the things that you have to be able to work on. And then I think the last pillar is, in many cases, it takes a village to get a person healthier. It's not just the person, it's the support structure that they have around them. if they're really willing to try to, let's say, make a lifestyle change of changing their eating habits, which can do all kinds of benefits to a patient, but their family isn't, and their family is living a whole different lifestyle than them and making poor choices, et cetera, and they're surrounded with that, well, then their infrastructure is not going to be there. So that's where it's a little linked to education, but it's also helping the families to understand, hey, your mom or your dad has diabetes. They're trying their best to overcome this disease and live a life that's as normal as possible. They're taking medication. You've got to help them. You can't be a part of the problem by contributing to bad habits or preventing them from being able to manage their disease state. And I think that those three pillars, right? Um, the last one is the most difficult, because how do you get the family to understand it, or the friends, or the spouses, et cetera, to know that they can be a part in helping the patient to get where they want to be. I think those three pillars, which are delicate, right? All of them are very delicate to balance. But I think as a company, we continue to look at ways to make those influences. And I think the industry as a whole is getting better at it. Yes, we are here to make a profit. We can't be a company if we don't make money. But if you're not going to make money in a good way, a way that benefits people, in a way that makes the world better, I don't know if I want to work for a company that does that. And I can tell you that I've been with this company because we try to balance it really well. We try to make
and that's actually really awesome. I think that was so eloquently put, is that it's so important about the community, especially now when people feel so isolated. Even the virtual community is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And potentially it's a benefit because now you're globally exposed to so many other people with similar conditions and situations.
Mm-hmm.
So in the last few minutes, I'm just going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So based on everything that we know today, living in the new normal, trying to emerge as, like, basically with the old cliche of the phoenix from the ashes,
Mm-hmm.
what is your greatest concern, I guess, moving forward, or watch out, or something that you're just kind of diligently looking out for?
Well, being a history major, I'll use the cliche that if you don't learn from the past, you will continue to create the same problems in the future, and you will just repeat the same things over and over again. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing companies change and transform because of COVID-19. And what they need to do is remember the learnings that they're doing, the systems they're putting in place, the training they're giving people to live in this environment, the great resources they're putting in the hands of patients. Don't forget it when things go back to normal, or turn into whatever the world's going to turn into in the next 2 to 3 years. Don't forget what you're learning. Continue to build those resources. Continue to bridge to different ways to overcome the challenges that we're having today. Don't become complacent and just think, well, we fixed it then, this is going away, now we can go back to the way we've done other things before. No, something else will happen. Some other thing will challenge us, and then now you're back to square one, and all the key learnings that you learned in 2019 and 2020, they're out the window. So I think that's where what I would say is the number one challenge and fear that I have, is that companies will forget. They'll go back into their routines, and then you're doomed to repeat what you did before.
Beautiful. Well said. And on that same note, leaving this on a positive, what is your greatest inspiration, aspiration for the future? What are you looking forward to?
I just think that we are beginning to see a bigger, broader world that we can aspire to make things better for people who are struggling with different disease states. A world where we can, and this is pie in the sky, but I think if you're not pie in the sky, if you're not big aspirations, you'll never even get to the middle, right? I think that it's a world that is looking at connecting with people in different ways, in ways that work for the individual, in ways that are different, thinking outside of the box. It also is looking at everybody, right? It's not just the people that can afford a medicine. It's the people that can't afford a medicine. And how do you get things into their hands? It's using technology that's worked well and recognizing the customers or the patients that are thriving in that environment, and continuing to enhance that, continuing to make it better, continue to expand the opportunities to reach more and more people so that they can feel better with their lives. And I think that I'm seeing that now, and I don't think it's going to go away. I think that that companies that are really recognizing the strong and important changes that they're trying to make, I think they're going to latch onto it and they're going to keep it. And new minds and new people that are coming into the organizations with different ways of seeing things, because now they're growing up with this. Maybe 10 years from now, we see people that say, hey, I know exactly how to deal with that. And here's a situation that's going to come up again. And here's how we handle it. So we got a whole new set of learning in the way that people are doing things now, in the digital world being in the way that they do everything. Our kids are going to know and learn so much differently and be able to expand that out to different people. I think that's where companies are going to be able to grab onto that and change and evolve and be able to handle situations that are unexpected, like what happened this year.
Love it. What a wonderful way to end this on a very positive note. I think it's very visionary and I think it's very hopeful. And I love the fact that there is a silver lining in every mashup that we find ourselves in. So this is absolutely awesome. So for anybody who's interested, we're going to be leaving the LinkedIn profile for Frank if anybody wants to connect with him and chat further. We also invite you to like this video and subscribe. This is actually how other people will be able to find us or hear us on our podcast. We also encourage you to check us out at impetusdigital.com. These are the kinds of conversations that we like to work with our pharma clients, talking about some of these really provocative topics, beyond the pill conversations, being able to do this safely in an online portal, both asynchronously and synchronously, so that we can all work together to collectively positively disrupt healthcare. So we invite you to talk to us if you are interested. So thank you for everybody attending today's session. Frank, it has been an absolute honor and loved chatting with you, and wishing everybody a positive day ahead.
Thanks, Natalie. I had a great time and I appreciate it. Feelings mutual.
Thank you.